He was just a poor carpenter, scraping by, living in the crumbling house his father left behind. No family, no fortune, and certainly no future. But everything changed the day Daniel heard whispers echoing from the basement. What he found beneath the floorboards would unravel a web of secrets darker than he ever imagined. Chained in the cold shadows was a mysterious woman, bruised, terrified, and begging him not to call the police. Her name was Elira, and she wasn't just a victim. She was the key to a secret society hiding in plain sight. Daniel made a choice that night, one that would shatter his quiet life and thrust him into a world of lies, danger, and betrayal. Soon he'd be hunted by powerful enemies, lose everything he held dear, and be forced to fight for truth with nothing but his tools, his courage, and the fire of justice burning inside him. But in saving Elira, he'd discover a strength he never knew he had, and uncover the truth about his own bloodline. This is the story of how one ordinary man stood against the darkness, and how a single act of compassion lit a spark that could topple an empire. Daniel sat beneath the overhang, listening to a crackling handheld radio Lena had cobbled together from salvage, static dancing between voices, news anchors speculating on unauthorized disclosures, anonymous leaks, and sudden resignations across tech, defense, and politics. "They're running scared," Lena said with a satisfied smirk. "Just like we planned." But Daniel didn't smile. "It's not enough. They'll regroup. We need something bigger, something final." Elira appeared from the woods, holding a strip of birch bark. "Found it." On it, tiny etchings, dots and dashes meticulously carved. Morse code. "It was stashed inside the spine of your father's old field manual," she said, handing it to Daniel. He translated it slowly. "Safe within the signal, North Ridge, red beacon, final witness." "Your father left a trail," Elira whispered. Lena studied the code. North Ridge. That could mean the relay tower he used to tinker with. You said he was obsessed with radio tech, right? Daniel nodded. He called it his listening post. Never told me what it was really for. Lena packed her bag. "Then it's time we go listen." That night, beneath the stars, they left the forest behind, chasing the signal that Everett Hayes had buried in code and memory. The journey to the ridge was grueling, jagged cliffs, freezing winds, and the constant fear of being tracked. But when they reached the summit, there it was, half buried in snow and moss, a rusted relay tower with a red weather beacon still blinking, powered by solar panels. Lena whistled. "Looks like your dad built more than just furniture." Inside the small shack at the tower's base, they found a makeshift operations center. Radios, hard drives, solar batteries, and notebooks. Dust covered everything, but the gear still hummed faintly with life. Daniel flipped through the logs, intercepted transmissions, encryption keys, names. Some they recognized from the leak, others still unknown. And a final entry in his father's handwriting. "If you're reading this, the storm has begun. This tower is the last safe place. From here you can see them, hear them, warn the world." Daniel stepped outside and looked out over the valley. The view stretched for miles. Highways, towns, distant cities blinking in the dusk. "This was his watchtower," he murmured. "He was guarding the world from up here." Lena wired the relay into her laptop. "If we amplify the signal, we can send a shortwave burst with the rest of the data. not just to whistleblower channels, to the world. Elira's eyes widened. We'd expose everything, no filters, no gatekeepers. Daniel clenched his fists. Then let's finish what he started. They set up camp. Lena worked through the night, building a secure line. Elira decoded more transmissions from Everett's logs. Daniel stood at the tower, watching the horizon. When the sun rose, they'd send the message. But they weren't alone. That night, through binoculars, Lena spotted movement in the trees, too coordinated to be hikers. "They found us," she said. Daniel looked at the red beacon pulsing above the tower. "No," he said, "we found them." The morning sun barely crested the ridge when the first shot rang out. A bullet cracked past Daniel's ear, embedding itself in the tower frame. He dove for cover behind a supply crate, heart slamming in his chest. "They're already here," Lena shouted, yanking Elira down behind a stack of old batteries. "Sniper, tree line, south slope." Daniel scanned the ridge. Movement, shadows, at least 5 armed figures, military-grade gear, no insignia, Virex. "How did they find us?" Elira cried out. Lena's face darkened. "They didn't track us. Someone told them." She turned toward Daniel. "There's only one person who knew about this tower besides us. Your dad's old war contact. He helped set this place up." Daniel's jaw clenched. "You think he sold us out?" "He's been compromised. They're cleaning house." Bullets tore through the trees as the team advanced. Lena fired short bursts, covering Daniel as he rushed to the relay tower. "We have to send the signal now." "I need 30 seconds, he yelled, punching keys on the transmitter. Elira crawled beside him, shoving in the flash drive. "You're not doing this alone." The antenna hummed. Data surged. A red light blinked rapidly, uploading. Then connection lost. "They're jamming it," Lena shouted. Daniel grabbed the emergency radio. "We'll have to boost it manually, line of sight relay." He looked at the exposed catwalk above. The highest point, and the most dangerous. Without hesitation, Daniel began to climb. The air thinned as Daniel climbed the tower, cold wind whipping at his jacket. Each rung groaned underfoot. Bullets ricocheted off the frame, but he didn't stop. From the top, he could see everything. The valley, the enemy team fanning out like hunters, smoke curling from the tree line, the scope glint of a sniper taking aim. He clipped the emergency transmitter to the antenna and flipped the switch. The beacon glowed white. The signal burst. Every server Martin pre-coded, every encrypted network Lena seeded, all triggered. The truth launched into the world like wildfire. Below, Lena and Elira fought like cornered wolves. Elira ducked behind crates, returning fire with surprising skill. Lena moved like a ghost, her sidearm deadly and deliberate. But the attackers weren't here to kill. They were here to capture. One broke through the defense, lunging for Elira, grabbing her. Daniel saw it from the tower. "No!" He slid down the ladder, scraped and bleeding, and slammed into the attacker, knocking him away. Together they tumbled into the snow. A punch, a knee, blood. Daniel stood, panting, shaking. They were surrounded now. "Run!" Lena screamed. "We'll split!" They didn't hesitate. They fled into the woods, splitting up. Lena lured a squad away with gunfire. Elira clutched the remaining backup drive, sprinting beside Daniel deeper into the forest. "No more safe houses," she gasped. "No," Daniel replied. "Now we hunt." 2 days passed. Daniel and Alira navigated the wilderness like fugitives from a war film, mud-covered, exhausted, and relentless. The terrain offered little comfort, steep ridges, freezing rivers, and the constant hum of drones above. But they had something Virex didn't. Momentum. The signal had gone out. Not fully, not globally, but enough to light sparks. Independent journalists, rogue intelligence agents, leakers, they were all reaching out. One encrypted voice message came through the emergency comms. "I heard the broadcast. I believe you. Come to Beacon Point, the old signal tower. I can help." No name, just a voice, steady, confident. Lena's last location pinged from the same area. Daniel looked at Alira. It could be a trap, or a rescue. They went. Beacon Point was a half-ruined broadcast station near a mountain pass, long abandoned. But when they arrived, the gate was open, and an old radio tower pulsed with new energy. Inside, waiting near the console, stood a man in his 50s. Military posture, silver hair, hard eyes. "You're Daniel Hayes," he said. "And you are?" "A friend of your father's, name's Briggs. He trained me before they turned on him. I've been waiting for this moment for a long time." Daniel's shoulders dropped. Hope, cautious and flickering, returned. "Then let's finish what he started," Daniel said. Briggs nodded. "Welcome to the Resistance." In the following days, the fire Daniel had sparked began to spread. The signal from the tower reached dozens of underground networks, whistleblower collectives, and anonymous investigative outlets. Briggs, a former intelligence handler gone rogue, connected Daniel and Alira with a network of silent allies, men and women embedded across the system, waiting for a reason to act. That reason had arrived. From the safety of Beacon Point, they monitored the fallout. Across the country, news anchors cautiously referenced the leaks. Subreddits and encrypted chat rooms exploded with decoded documents. A few small independent news stations went further, airing segments that directly quoted the files from Virex's inner dealings. In one of the largest cities on the East Coast, protesters began gathering outside a defense contractor's headquarters, waving banners that read, "Who pulls the strings? Where's Alira? We see you now." Daniel watched it all unfold on an old CRT monitor in Briggs' war room. He barely recognized himself anymore. The man who once hid behind a workbench, avoiding overdue bills and memories of his father, was gone. In his place stood a man who had become a voice, loud, dangerous, and impossible to ignore. But with visibility came risk. "That's your face on a poster," Lena said, pointing at a live feed. "They're calling you the Carpenter, the man who found the truth under his floorboards." Daniel chuckled bitterly. "Let's hope they keep calling me that and not the martyr." Briggs turned from his desk. "This phase is over. Virex knows you're alive, knows you're leading. They won't stop. You've got two choices now. Go dark again or go loud. Very loud." Daniel met Alira's eyes. She didn't flinch. "Let's blow the doors off." To strike Virex, they needed a name. One real name from the shadow list. Someone tied directly to the board. Alira found it buried deep in one of her decrypted files. Julian Voss, a high-ranking tech executive and former intelligence liaison. He was rumored to be the architect of Project Halo, a clandestine system of black sites and behavioral control experiments. But Voss didn't hide in bunkers. He held fundraisers, attended galas. He was untouchable behind velvet ropes and bodyguards. unless someone got close. "I can get in," Lena said. "I've still got credentials from my old contract days." "No way," Daniel protested. "It's suicide." She leaned against the table, cocky as ever. "No, it's tactical. You need someone who can make the handoff." The plan was simple. Lena would attend a private tech summit in Chicago where Voss was scheduled to speak. She'd plant a device, a payload designed by Briggs to siphon encrypted data from Voss's personal comms. Then she'd disappear before anyone knew what hit them, but it didn't go as planned. Back at Beacon Point, Daniel and Elira tracked the live feed from Lena's tracker. At precisely 9:02 p.m., the signal went dark. They waited, hoped. By midnight, an encrypted message arrived. "Tell Daniel I don't regret it. He was worth it." Elira covered her mouth, eyes flooding. Daniel didn't speak. He simply walked outside into the cold night air, stared at the stars, and whispered, "I'm sorry." The next day, a new name was released to the public. Julian Voss, Project Halo, confirmed. Lena's sacrifice wasn't in vain, but it came with a cost that Daniel would carry forever. With Lena gone, Daniel and Elira returned to the fight harder than ever. Briggs arranged for them to meet a clandestine assembly known as the Underground Court, a collective of rogue agents, ex-journalists, whistleblowers, and hackers. Each of them had lost something to Virex: family, careers, silence. They met in an abandoned government fallout shelter in Nevada, accessible only by a rusted maintenance tunnel, hidden inside a dried-out aqueduct. "We don't deal in rumors here," said Cassandra Tran, the group's lead analyst and former DOJ investigator. "We deal in evidence. You bring proof. We'll give you a platform." Daniel placed the backup drive on the table. "I've got more than proof," he said. "I've got the fuse to a revolution." For hours, the court reviewed the files, verified, cross-checked. Eventually, Cassandra looked up and nodded. "This could indict half the security complex," she said, "and the other half will come gunning for you." Briggs leaned in. "Then we make our move first." The court agreed to broadcast a coordinated series of leaks tied directly to named officials and real-time satellite evidence, but only if Daniel would be the face of the final call-out. Live. Global. Daniel agreed without blinking. That night, Elira couldn't sleep. She sat beside the bunker's old generator room, staring at a faded photo of a man in uniform, her father. He was a reformist, she finally told Daniel, inside Virex, thought he could change it from within. She handed Daniel a letter, yellowed with age, sealed in wax. "I was 10 when he vanished. They said it was a car crash, but I found this in a safe years later. He knew he was going to be silenced." Daniel read the letter, eyes narrowing. It was more than a goodbye. It was a warning. "If they ever come for you, go west. Find the Carpenter. He'll know what to do." Daniel's hands trembled. "He meant your father," Elira whispered. "He trusted him, believed in him, and now I believe in you." Daniel looked at her, eyes raw. "You don't have to carry this alone anymore." "I never did," she replied. "I just needed to find someone who wouldn't run." They sat there until sunrise, two survivors bound by sacrifice and by the pasts their fathers died to protect. Cassandra brought it out like a relic, sealed in military-grade encryption, stashed on a hidden server offline until the court validated Daniel's data. The final file, the one even Alira had only heard rumors about. Inside, a complete operational flowchart of Virex's real command structure, a true chain of command, shadow accounts, surveillance directives, deep state operatives, and at the top, 3 names. One of them, Graham Lorick, a senator who had championed government transparency for over a decade. He was one of them all along, Cassandra whispered. Briggs let out a low whistle. This is what we needed. Daniel looked at the court. We go live. We show the people what's been hidden in plain sight, and we do it now. The countdown began. 72 hours until the live drop. Public data vaults, journalists pre-briefed. Emergency press releases queued. There was no turning back. Only forward, into fire, and into freedom. The plan was surgical, swift, devastating. Under cover of night, Daniel, Briggs, Alira, and a strike team of trusted underground court operatives gathered at the edge of a secured Virex facility in Northern Virginia. It wasn't a traditional building. It was a cold, windowless cube nestled into a cliffside. Officially, it was listed as a weather data hub. In truth, it was one of Virex's most critical relay centers, a repository of personnel records, project files, and black site coordinates, and it was the nerve center. We go in quiet, extract the final verification files, and get out, Briggs whispered as they examined the 3D holographic blueprint. This place is run on isolated fiber, no outside transmissions. If we get the data here, it's final proof of every lie they've sold the world. Alira locked eyes with Daniel. If we go in, we might not come out. We don't go in, he replied. We walk in. Wearing stolen clearance badges and repurposed uniforms, Daniel and Alira took the front entrance while Briggs and the others prepared to breach from the rear. Inside, the facility was ice cold and eerily silent. Clinical walls, unsmiling guards, rows of terminals humming like a beehive of secrets. Daniel moved with a carpenter's precision, his face calm but alert. Every step took him closer to the archive room. They reached the vault, biometric locked. Alira pulled out a stolen thumbprint chip, one last trick from Lena's data cache. Click. The vault opened. Inside, rows of servers and terminals, and a single workstation labeled PRISMSEEDCORE. This was it. The drive slotted in. Data began to stream. But then the door slammed shut behind them. The lights went red, and from the shadows stepped a man Daniel hadn't seen in over 2 decades. Tall, silver hair, eyes like stone. His uncle. Daniel stared in stunned silence as the man he had only seen once since childhood stepped into the light. Silas Hayes, his father's older brother, the dead relative who had vanished from family stories after a bitter falling out. A man Daniel had once believed was in prison, or the grave. You, Daniel breathed. Me, Silas said calmly. I was wondering when you'd make it this far. Everett always said you were stubborn. Daniel's fists clenched. You're with them. Silas tilted his head. I am them, or at least I was. Now I suppose I'm more a shepherd of what's left. Alira stepped forward, voice hard. You oversaw Project Halo. I saw your name. You tortured people, buried whistleblowers. I maintained stability, Silas replied. Your father wanted chaos. He thought exposing the truth would change the world. He never realized people don't want the truth. They want comfort, control. Daniel stepped between them. You chained Elira in our basement. You used my father's own house as a prison. Silas nodded, almost wistful, because he wouldn't follow orders. He believed in absolutes, justice, transparency, things that don't survive in the real world. You killed him, Daniel said, voice low. Silas paused. He killed himself. The moment he chose rebellion over protection, I simply made sure the end was swift. Rage burned in Daniel's chest. You're going to pay for everything you've done. Silas took a step back. I doubt that. You're outnumbered, surrounded, and very soon you'll be forgotten. But then an alarm blared. Silas turned. On the main screen, a live countdown flashed. Public dump sequence activated, ETA 2 minutes. Briggs's voice crackled in Daniel's earpiece. We're in. Backdoors blown, upload triggered, finish it. Silas drew a gun, but Elira was faster. A single shot rang out. Silas staggered, dropping the weapon, his knees hitting the steel floor with a final hollow clang. Elira stepped over him, eyes steel. For my father. Daniel pulled the drive from the prism core. The room trembled. Above them, fire alarms screamed. Outside, Virex security scrambled, but it was too late. The truth had left the building, and the world would never be the same. The broadcast went live at exactly 10 a.m. Eastern. It began on a single obscure live stream platform, an anonymous source simply titled The Carpenter's Broadcast. Within minutes, it was mirrored by thousands of viewers across encrypted networks. Then whistleblower groups picked it up. By noon, it had breached the public web, and by 2 p.m., it had gone viral. Daniel stood behind a simple wooden podium in a nondescript room, face bare, eyes steady. Behind him, Cassandra Tran from the underground court, Elira, and 2 data analysts from the Whistleblower Coalition. My name is Daniel Hayes. I'm not a politician. I'm not a soldier. I'm a carpenter. And 3 months ago, I found a woman in chains beneath my floor. That's how this started. For the next 15 minutes, the world listened. They heard about Virex, about the covert projects, about the whistleblowers imprisoned or executed. They saw live evidence, financial documents, intercepted communications, and classified operation files. These aren't accusations, they're admissions, written by the very people who committed them. And the reason I'm here today is because I believe we deserve to live in a world where truth isn't a liability. Government servers crashed from traffic, security agencies went into lockdown, major news outlets scrambled to verify, but it was too late. The data was in the public domain, and the public wanted blood. That evening, Elira took the podium. I was one of their prisoners. My father died exposing them, but I survived. And now, with your help, I'm free. The chains they used to silence us are broken, and now we speak for those who never got the chance. The crowd watching online swelled into the millions. By nightfall, global protests erupted. Embassies were surrounded. Executives and officials named in the leaks were detained or fled. Journalists gathered outside Virex's known headquarters, but found them abandoned. Daniel stepped outside into the cold air of Beacon Point. Beside him, Briggs stood with arms crossed. You realize, he said, this isn't the end. It's the beginning. Daniel nodded. Let's make sure it's the right kind of beginning. The next 72 hours were chaos. Dozens of governments launched emergency investigations. Key senators were subpoenaed. Military contracts were suspended. The stock price of companies tied to Virex nosedived into oblivion. And then the unexpected happened. Former Virex insiders, operatives, tech contractors, security specialists began coming forward. Some were arrested. Others fled the country, but many offered new files, eyewitness accounts, and verification of every claim Daniel had made. In the heart of D.C., massive demonstrations turned into a movement. No more shadows. Tens of thousands marched wearing masks, bearing the insignia Daniel's father had left behind, the open eye carved into stone. For Daniel, it was a strange dream, one where he wasn't just surviving anymore. He was watching history unfold, with his hands having helped carve its path. But the collapse of Virex didn't come in a single explosion. It came in fractures, slow, splintering breaks from within. One by one, Virex subsidiaries filed for bankruptcy. Government contracts were dissolved. Their data servers were seized and archived. In the ruins of the organization, something else emerged. Truth tribunals, citizen-led inquiries, online public hearings, a way to ensure the accountability wouldn't die with a few fall guys. Daniel was invited to testify at the first. He spoke not as a victim or a hero, but as a man who had simply chosen to act. "I'm not here to destroy," he said. "I'm here to rebuild." When he left the podium, the room stood in applause, not for the man, but for the movement. Back at Beacon Point, Alira stood watching the sunset. "You ever think we'd see this?" she asked. Daniel shook his head. "But now that we have, we can't let it stop." She took his hand. Together they watched the remnants of a corrupted empire fall into the dust. And in that silence, a new world began to breathe. With Virex dismantled, a sweeping wave of reform followed. Thousands of individuals, once detained or silenced, were freed as governments reopened cold cases and blacklisted detention facilities. Whistleblowers once branded as traitors became public heroes. Statues were torn down, new ones erected. Alira spent weeks visiting former safe houses, now turned into public memorials. In one, she met a young girl who had survived a detainment camp after her parents leaked environmental sabotage documents. "You gave me my voice back," the girl whispered. Alira hugged her tightly, tears spilling over. Meanwhile, Daniel worked with Briggs and Cassandra to establish the Hayes Foundation, dedicated to protecting truth-tellers, investigative journalists, and tech transparency groups worldwide. But they didn't stop there. Daniel helped build sanctuaries, legal aid centers, and relocation networks. The carpenter in him returned, designing shelters with wood, sweat, and steel, spaces that represented not only safety but dignity. One such facility stood on the land where his old home had burned. He rebuilt it, beam by beam. This time, it wasn't a home just for him. It was a home for anyone who dared to speak truth in a world that once punished it. Daniel never thought he'd fall in love again, not after the years lost in silence and struggle. But as the dust settled, something deeper bloomed between him and Alira. It wasn't just romance, it was resilience, a shared bond forged in fire and hope. One crisp morning, while rebuilding a reclaimed community garden, Daniel turned to her and said simply, "Stay." She blinked. "I thought I already had." They laughed, tears in their eyes. They never married, not in a formal way, but they shared everything, a quiet understanding, a vow stronger than rings. Together they traveled to speak at international forums. They mentored youth groups, helped design secure communication apps, and trained activists in operational security. The world didn't become perfect overnight, but it became possible. And that made all the difference. One evening, Daniel returned to the workshop behind their new home. He began carving a new sign, not for protest or politics, but for joy. It read, "Truth lives here." He hung it on the gate. For the first time in a long time, the wood felt warm in his hands. The workshop had changed, but its soul remained. The old smell of sawdust and pine, the rhythmic beat of hammer on nail, and now voices, young ones, learning how to build with their hands and speak with their hearts. Daniel ran a weekly mentorship program for local teens, many of whom had family members directly affected by Virex. Some were angry, some were broken, all were healing. One day, a boy named Theo asked him, "Why did you do it? Why didn't you just walk away?" Daniel thought for a long moment before answering, "Because someone had to care, and sometimes the person who cares is just the one who hears the chains first." Theo nodded slowly. "I want to be that person too." "You already are," Daniel said. The ashes of Daniel's old life had become the soil for something new. Hope wasn't just a dream anymore. It was being passed on, one voice, one hand, one heart at a time. Years later, stories of the man who started it all still echoed. Children grew up reading about the carpenter, who found truth beneath his feet and rose to build a future from it. His name, once unknown, became a symbol not of power but of purpose. Daniel never chased fame. He never wanted to be remembered. But he was. For the workshop he opened, for the truth he revealed, for the people he saved, and for the world he helped reshape. On the anniversary of the first broadcast, a quiet ceremony was held. Elira spoke, standing before a small crowd in Beacon Point. He didn't fight for glory. He fought because it was right. Because every act of courage begins with someone choosing not to look away. The final scene fades to Daniel standing alone, years earlier, looking out over the valley from the signal tower. A soft breeze moves through the trees, his father's old jacket around his shoulders, a smile playing at the corners of his lips. He was just a carpenter, but that was enough to change the world. The morning sun filtered weakly through the soot-stained windows of the old workshop. Dust danced in the golden light, swirling over half-finished chairs, splintered beams, and a forgotten coffee mug from 3 days ago. The rhythmic clack of hammer on wood echoed through the silence, steady, unrelenting, a one-man orchestra of survival. Daniel Hayes wiped the sweat from his brow with the back of his sleeve. 34 years old, wiry and rough around the edges, he looked older than his age. Life had a way of carving into him like the oak slabs he worked on, chipping away layer after layer until only resilience remained. He ran a small carpentry business, if it could even be called that. His clients were few and payments even fewer. The workshop, nestled at the back of the dilapidated house he'd inherited, was more memory than modernity. It creaked and groaned in the wind like an old ship at sea, always on the verge of sinking, but it was all he had. That morning, like every morning, Daniel dragged himself out of bed at sunrise. A cup of instant coffee, no milk, no sugar. He couldn't afford either. His boots were held together by duct tape and hope, but he laced them up like armor. Outside, the air was cool and still, almost too still. He paused in the yard to check the mailbox. Inside, a single envelope. Final notice. Electricity. He sighed, stuffing it into his jacket. Another battle to lose later. In the shop, Daniel inspected his latest project, a small kitchen table for a customer who promised to pay once the tax refund comes in. He ran his calloused fingers along the edge, noting the uneven cut. His heart wasn't in it. Lately, nothing was. Every nail driven into wood felt heavier than the last. He missed his father, the man who taught him everything, a master craftsman with strong hands and a silent soul. After the old man passed away 3 years ago, Daniel tried to keep the shop going, but the world didn't want handmade anymore. It wanted cheap and fast. Factory furniture, flat-pack lives. He wiped sawdust from the bench and reached for another plank when a strange sound froze him mid-motion. Clink, faint, metallic, muffled. He turned his head slowly, listening. Nothing. He waited. Clink. There it was again. It was coming from beneath him. The basement. Daniel frowned. The basement had always creeped him out. As a kid, he was never allowed down there. His father kept it locked tight, warning him it was unsafe. Old pipes and broken beams, he said. After he died, Daniel never bothered with it. What could possibly be down there worth exploring? Still, the sound tugged at his curiosity like a loose thread. He dropped his hammer and walked to the trap door behind the tool shelf. It was thick, old and heavy, with rusted hinges and a large iron ring for a handle. A padlock, equally ancient, hung from the latch. He hadn't noticed that before. Strangely, the lock was open. Heart thumping louder than he cared to admit, Daniel knelt down and pulled. The trapdoor groaned open, releasing a puff of cold, musty air. A ladder descended into darkness, swallowed whole by the black. Clink. This time, louder. He hesitated. Probably a pipe, he muttered to himself, reaching for the flashlight hanging nearby. But even as he said it, he knew it wasn't. Pipes didn't echo like that. Pipes didn't sound human. He shined the beam down. Dust motes shimmered in the light. But beyond that, only shadow. He could just make out the bottom of the ladder resting on stone. Taking a deep breath, Daniel began to descend. The air grew colder with each rung, and a sickly, damp smell curled around him. As his boots hit the stone floor, the flashlight flickers briefly, then steadied. The basement was larger than he expected. Walls of crumbling brick, old shelving units, a rusted furnace, and in the far corner, movement. He pointed the flashlight toward it, the beam trembling slightly in his grasp, and then he saw her, a woman, chained. Eyes wide, face pale, clothes torn and filthy. She looked straight at him. "Please," she whispered, her voice cracking like dry timber. "Don't let them find me." Daniel started, frozen in place, heart in his throat. This wasn't just a noise, this wasn't just a broken pipe. This was the beginning of everything. Daniel stood frozen, the beam of his flashlight trembling over the woman's face. Her cheeks were sunken, her lips cracked, her wrists bound by iron cuffs bolted to the wall. She couldn't have been older than 30. Her eyes, though dulled by fatigue, held a sharpness, a mixture of fear and fury. How How long have you been down here? He finally managed to whisper. She didn't answer right away. Her eyes darted toward the trapdoor, then back to him. Please, she rasped. Close the door. Someone might hear. Snapping into action, Daniel scrambled up the ladder and shoved the trapdoor shut, laying 2 heavy toolboxes on top of it. As he descended again, the reality of what he'd found started to settle in. A woman, in chains, in his basement. He crouched down in front of her, keeping a careful distance. "Who are you?" he asked. "Who did this to you?" "My name is Elira," she said, her voice steadier now. I don't know who you are, but if you want to stay alive, don't call the police. Don't tell anyone." "Why not?" "You need help, medical help, food, water. God, you look like you haven't eaten in—" "They'll find me," she cut him off. "The police can't protect you. No one can." Daniel stared at her. Her eyes were fierce now, blazing with a quiet intensity. "Who are they?" Elira hesitated. "People you've never heard of. People who don't want to be found. I tried to expose them. That's why I'm here." Daniel backed up slightly, overwhelmed. "This is insane. I don't even know you. Why are you in my basement?" "I didn't choose this," she snapped, coughing hard afterward. "Your father. He wasn't who you think he was. He kept me alive. He hid me when he defected. He was trying to protect me." Daniel blinked. "My dad?" The words hit him like a hammer. His father, the quiet, stoic man who taught him to whittle spoons and build shelves. That man? Elira nodded slowly. He wasn't just a carpenter. He used this place as a safe house for people like me, whistleblowers, escaped informants. Daniel's world tilted. "I need water," she said weakly. "Please." He didn't know what to believe, but he turned and ran back upstairs. His hands shook as he poured a glass from the tap, filling a plate with bread and cheese. When he returned, she drank greedily and ate with trembling fingers. As she ate, Daniel leaned against the wall, eyes locked on her. "What happens if someone finds out you're here?" he asked. Elira looked up slowly. "Then we both disappear, just like the others." That night, Daniel couldn't sleep. The old house groaned with the weight of decades. Every creak now felt like a threat. Every gust of wind sounded like footsteps. He kept the lights off and peeked through the curtains every few minutes. Was this really happening? He sat at the kitchen table, the cold steel of his father's old revolver on the table in front of him. It hadn't been fired in years. He didn't even know if it worked. He stared at the trapdoor leading to the basement, toolboxes still stacked on top. Elira was sleeping now, or at least trying to. He had brought down a blanket and an old pillow. Her eyes had softened before closing, but Daniel didn't miss the way she glanced at every corner of the room before letting herself rest. He had questions, too many questions, but there was one thing gnawing at him more than anything else. Why had his father never told him? At sunrise, Daniel returned to the workshop. He moved aside the shelves and swept the floor clean around the trapdoor. The wood was scuffed, but something caught his eye. A faint line, like a groove, running beneath the corner shelf. He crouched down and gave the board a firm push. Click, it slid open an inch. Heart pounding, Daniel pulled it fully aside to reveal a narrow gap in the foundation wall. Just wide enough to crawl through. He grabbed a lantern and squeezed in. The tunnel was short and opened into a hidden chamber he never knew existed. Inside, dusty shelves lined the walls. Wooden crates, old furniture, stacks of yellowing paper, a small desk with a rusted metal lamp, a filing cabinet, and above all, a symbol on the far wall, etched into the stone. An open eye. He didn't recognize it, but it gave him chills. Daniel approached the desk. Inside one drawer, he found photographs, blurry, taken at night. Men in suits, military gear, hidden compounds. One photo made him gasp. His father, standing with a much younger Elira. Suddenly, everything started to make a twisted kind of sense. The secrecy, the locked basement, the strange visitors when Daniel was a child, whom his father always told him to avoid. Elira hadn't lied. Daniel stepped back into the tunnel, sealed the hidden room behind him, and descended into the basement again. Elira was awake, her back against the wall. "I found it," he said, kneeling beside her. "The room, the photos, my dad. He really was helping you." She nodded solemnly. "Then I need to help you too," he said. "Tell me what to do next." Elira looked at Daniel for a long moment, studying his face. Her expression softened just enough to reveal a glimmer of relief, but it vanished as quickly as it came. "We don't have much time," she said. "If they haven't already realized I'm missing, they will soon." Daniel frowned. "Who exactly are they? What did you see that made them lock you up?" Elira leaned her head back against the cold brick wall and took a long breath. "I worked as a translator for a private intelligence firm. Corporate clients, mostly. But behind the closed doors, I saw too much. Secret prisons, blackmail, illegal arms deals run by a syndicate masquerading as a defense contractor. I found out they were buying silence through disappearances." Daniel tried to process her words. "And my father? He used to work with them, logistics, they said, but he started digging. When he tried to leave, they came after him. That's when he took me in. He kept me safe for a while." Daniel exhaled, wiping his hands down his face. "You're saying my father was involved in something like espionage?" "In a way," she said. "He was one of the few trying to stop it." A long silence stretched between them. Then Daniel stood. "We need to get you out of those chains." He went to his toolbox, retrieved a bolt cutter, and knelt beside her. Her wrists were raw, the metal biting deep into the skin. "This might hurt," he said. "Less than they did," she muttered. The steel groaned under pressure, but with a sharp snap the shackle gave way. She winced as she pulled her arm free. The other cuff came off a moment later, and Elira collapsed into his arms, exhausted but free. Daniel laid her gently down on an old cot he had brought in earlier. "You can rest now. I'll figure out what to do." But even as he said it, dread settled in his chest. He couldn't call the police. He didn't trust anyone. He was broke, outnumbered, and completely unprepared. He was a carpenter, not a spy, not a hero, just a man who opened the wrong door, or maybe the right one. Upstairs, the old floorboard near the front entrance creaked. Daniel froze. Elira sat up, her eyes wide. "They're here." Daniel moved swiftly, killing the basement light and motioning for Elira to stay quiet. The creak came again. He wasn't imagining it. Someone was inside the house. He climbed the ladder as silently as possible and peeked through the trapdoor's crack. The workshop was dimly lit, but he saw shadows moving, 2, maybe 3 figures, quiet, controlled. Not thieves, professionals. His heart pounded like a drum. He grabbed his father's revolver from the workbench, cocked it with a trembling hand and listened. A voice, hushed but firm. Sweep the rooms. Check the basement. They know. Daniel slid the trapdoor shut without a sound and turned to Elira. There's no way out down here? She shook her head. Just the crawl space, too tight to get far. Then we hide. He pulled open the hidden passage behind the false wall, where the symbol of the open eye watched them like a guardian and guided Elira inside. They crouched together behind the crates, barely breathing. Footsteps thudded above. Boards creaked under heavy boots. Then the sharp sound of the trapdoor being thrown open. Daniel gripped the revolver. Voices, boots on metal. Someone descended. A beam of light swept through the basement, lingering on the empty cot. Then it moved, scanning the room slowly, methodically. Daniel pressed a finger to his lips. Elira nodded, holding her breath. The footsteps came closer, then stopped, right in front of the hidden wall. The light flicked off. Silence. A long moment passed, and then the sound of the basement ladder again. Someone retreating. They didn't find it. A minute later, a door slammed upstairs. The intruders were gone. Daniel waited 10 more minutes just in case before he slowly emerged from hiding. Elira followed, visibly shaken. That was them, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. They won't give up. If they know I'm here, they'll be back. Stronger, louder. Daniel ran a hand through his hair, trying to steady his nerves. I have a friend, he said finally. She's ex-military, runs a PI firm now. If anyone can help us disappear, it's her. Elira nodded slowly. Then we call her tonight. Daniel glanced around the room one last time, the flashlight flickering over cold stone and cracked brick. He had just crossed a line, and there was no going back. Daniel poured Elira a fresh cup of water and handed it to her with trembling fingers. He'd seen fear before, at funerals, during storms, even in his own reflection. But the way Elira spoke, it was something else. This wasn't just fear. It was survival boiled down to instinct. They sat in the dim light of the hidden chamber, now their temporary sanctuary. Daniel had dragged in a lantern, blankets, and a small crate to serve as a table. He needed answers, and she was finally ready to give them. Start from the beginning, Daniel said. I need to know what we're dealing with. Elira sipped the water slowly before speaking. The organization is called Virex. Not officially, of course. They operate under a dozen shell companies, security, logistics, finance. They recruit from the military, intelligence agencies, even private think tanks. Their real purpose? Control. Secrets are their currency. She leaned forward, her eyes haunted. I was a translator for one of their overseas projects. They said it was humanitarian aid. It wasn't. It was arms trafficking, moving weapons to factions they could manipulate. Daniel blinked. And you found proof? She nodded. I archived intercepted communications, encrypted files, and internal memos. I copied what I could before they noticed. I tried to go to the press. They got to you first. They killed my contact, and then they came for me. She looked up. That's when your father found me. I don't know how, but he got me before they did. He told me he used to work on the inside, logistics. He helped them move people and materials until he realized what they were doing. He turned on them and in doing so became a target too. Daniel swallowed hard. He never said a word to me, not one. Alira's voice softened. He did everything he could to keep you out of it, to protect you. You were his anchor. Daniel stood and faced the small space. His thoughts were racing, grief, confusion, anger. His father had died thinking the past was buried, but it had clawed its way back up, one rusted chain at a time. "I need to make a call," he muttered. "If they're watching my phone, they'll track me. I'll use the payphone at the old gas station." Alira's eyes flicked to the trapdoor. "Be careful, they don't make mistakes." "I won't either," Daniel replied, grabbing his jacket. "And I'm not letting them hurt you again." For the first time, she offered a faint smile. "You sound just like your father." The night air hit Daniel like a slap, crisp, bitter, and eerily silent. He kept his head down, hoodie pulled tight, and his hands buried deep in his pockets. He made his way across the cracked sidewalk to the abandoned gas station on the edge of town, the one with a still functioning payphone and broken security cameras. Inside the phone booth, he punched in the number from memory. 2 rings, then a voice. "Yeah? It's Daniel Hayes. I need your help." There was a pause. "Dan? Jesus, you've been off-grid for years. What kind of trouble are you in?" "The kind you don't talk about over unsecured lines. Meet me at my shop, midnight, bring everything." Click. He didn't wait for confirmation. He knew Lena well enough. If anyone would show up armed and angry, it was her. Back at the house, Alira was awake and waiting. Did she agree? "She'll be here." Daniel sat beside her. "We need to move you upstairs. The basement isn't safe anymore." "I'm not strong enough to run," Alira admitted. "If they come back, then we fight smarter." He helped her upstairs, one shaky step at a time. He had cleared the attic earlier, laid out blankets, filled a small thermos, and stashed some canned food. It wasn't much, but it was better than concrete and chains. He settled her in and sat on the floor beside the attic hatch, revolver in hand. At exactly midnight, Lena arrived. The knock was soft. 3 taps, pause, 2 more. Their old signal from back when Daniel had a life beyond wood and nails. He opened the door. There she was. Combat boots, black coat, steel gray eyes. "You look like crap," she said. "Nice to see you too." She stepped in and scanned the room like a human scanner. "You bring me out here for a girl?" He gestured to the attic hatch. "Not just any girl. She's connected to Virex." That wiped the smirk off Lena's face. "Alira used to work for them. My dad helped her escape. Now they're trying to erase both of us." Lena nodded. "You've stepped into a hornet's nest." "Help me burn it down." She smiled grimly. "You know I love a good fire." Daniel looked up toward the attic, where Alira lay curled beneath old quilts. It wasn't just about protection anymore. It was about defiance. He was no longer just a poor carpenter. He was a man with a mission and people worth fighting for. The house felt like a ticking bomb. Every breath, every creak in the floorboards was a reminder that time was running out. Daniel, Lena, and Alira sat in the cramped attic, a single camping lantern casting long shadows on the angled ceiling. Lena leaned against the wall, legs crossed, pistol on her thigh. She studied Alira with sharp, assessing eyes. "So," she said, voice low, "how deep were you in?" Alira glanced at Daniel, then back to Lena. "I had level 2 clearance, enough to see things I wasn't supposed to. Communications between operatives. transport manifests, financial transfers to offshore accounts. They're funding operations in countries we're not even officially present in. Human trafficking? Lena asked. Alira nodded. Weapons, surveillance experiments, intelligence contracts tied to foreign regimes. They play every side, profit over people. And your proof? Lena pressed. I had it. It was stored on an encrypted drive until they found my apartment. Your father made a copy before he went into hiding, she said, looking at Daniel. It's hidden somewhere in this house. He told me it would be my insurance. Daniel leaned forward. Where would he hide it? Alira hesitated. He said it was close to the heart, but buried in the bones. That was the last thing he told me before they separated us. Daniel blinked. Sounds like the old man, always talking in riddles. Lena stood. We'll find it. In the meantime, we need to move. If they know she's here, they'll bring backup. Daniel shook his head. She can't travel far. She needs rest. Lena looked at Alira. You up for a fight? Alira met her gaze without flinching. If I go down, I'm taking them with me. Lena smirked. Then we're good. That night, no one slept. Lena took watch near the window with a pair of binoculars, her eyes scanning every shadow. Daniel stayed by Alira's side, holding her hand when she trembled, feeding her spoonfuls of soup when her strength faded. Questions circled his mind like vultures. Who was his father, really? What had he given his life for? And what was Daniel willing to sacrifice now? By dawn, the decision was made. We move at sunset, Lena said, pulling out a folded map on the kitchen table. There's an old ranger station 2 hours north, abandoned. No power, no cell towers, no eyes. Daniel nodded. We'll need fuel and supplies and a backup route. I've got a stash nearby, Lena replied. Ammo, burner phones, enough gear to keep us invisible for a while. Alira came down the stairs slowly, her strength returning in small, hard-won increments. I found something, she said, holding out a dusty notebook. It was hidden in a false panel under the attic floor. Daniel opened it. Familiar handwriting, diagrams, and a list of dates and coordinates. At the back, a sketch of the house's layout with a red X marked in the crawl space. Heart and bones, he murmured. They spent the afternoon digging beneath the house, crawling through dirt and insulation, until Daniel's hands struck something solid, an old lockbox wrapped in a canvas bag. Inside, a flash drive sealed in a waterproof case, a faded photograph of Daniel as a boy, and a letter. He opened it carefully. If you're reading this, I've failed to stop them, but you can. Protect Alira. Trust no one. The truth is your weapon now. Dad. He swallowed hard, eyes burning. No turning back now. As night fell, Lena packed the car with quiet precision. Alira climbed into the back, blanket wrapped tightly around her. Daniel looked back at the house, the only home he'd ever known. Now just another battlefield in a war he never wanted. Lena started the engine. Time to vanish. But before they could pull out of the driveway, the headlights caught something, a glint of metal at the tree line. Then movement. Daniel's heart jumped. Go! Now! Lena hit the gas just as bullets punched through the rear window. Glass shattered. Alira screamed. A black SUV roared onto the road behind them. We've got a tail, Lena shouted. Daniel leaned out the window with his revolver and fired, hitting a tire. The SUV swerved but kept coming. Alira clutched the drive to her chest. "This is what they're after," she cried. "They won't stop." Lena turned sharply onto a side road, tires skidding on gravel. The forest closed in around them. "We hold them off long enough to disappear," Daniel shouted. "Then we hit back, with everything." In the rear-view mirror, flames lit the horizon, the house, his workshop. Everything he had, gone. But something else was born in that fire. Resolve. The road narrowed into a tree-lined corridor, moonlight flickering like Morse code through the canopy above. Lena drove with precision, one hand on the wheel, the other gripping her sidearm. Daniel kept watch behind them, squinting through the broken glass, searching for headlights that didn't come. Eventually, the forest swallowed the road. They turned off the engine, cloaked in silence. The only sounds were breathing, crackling leaves, and the occasional snap of a branch in the distance. They had lost their pursuers, for now. They moved quickly through the underbrush, flashlights wrapped in cloth to dim the beams. Lena led them to a structure barely visible in the darkness, an abandoned ranger station, just as she'd promised. Peeling paint, rusted locks, a broken antenna drooping like a wounded bird. Inside, it smelled of mold and pine. Dust coated the floors. Mice had long since claimed the corners. Perfect, safe. Alira collapsed onto the old cot with a groan. Daniel knelt beside her, brushing her hair back from her face. "We made it." "For now," she whispered. "But they won't give up. Not while they think I'm alive." "They know," Lena added. "They burned your house down, Dan." That was a message. Daniel stood, his fists clenched. "Then let's send one back." He went to the fire pit behind the station and burned what little remained of his past. Fragments of letters, photos, receipts. A lifetime of memories turned to ash. When he returned, Alira was waiting. "There's something else," she said, holding up the flash drive. "This isn't just evidence, it's a map. Names, locations, code names tied to real operations. Some of these people, senators, CEOs, they're untouchable without this." Lena's eyes widened. "That's why they've been so desperate." Daniel nodded slowly. "And now we've got leverage." But Alira looked afraid. "You don't understand. If we use this wrong, people die. Not just the guilty, innocents. We need to be smart." Daniel sat down beside her, suddenly feeling the weight of it all. "Then we plan," he said. "We find the right person to release it, someone not in their pocket. We move carefully. We survive." Lena crossed her arms. "And if they find us again?" Daniel's voice was cold steel. "Then we won't run this time." The following morning, the world was still. No birds, no wind, just the quiet dread of waiting. Daniel walked the perimeter of the ranger station, checking the traps Lena had set. Fishing line across the trail, tin cans stacked at choke points, tripwire linked to a flare. As he returned to the cabin, he noticed something strange. A tree near the south path, scarred at the base, fresh boot prints in the mud. His heart jumped. He ran inside. "We've got company, one scout, maybe more behind." Lena immediately took position at the window. "We've got 30 minutes, tops." Daniel turned to Alira. "We can't keep running, not like this." She looked up at him, tired but clear-eyed. "So what do we do?" He pulled out the flash drive, holding it like a relic. "We go on the offensive." Lena raised an eyebrow. Are you sure about that? Daniel nodded. We find a way to leak this, publicly, loudly, everywhere. No more hiding. They want silence. Let's give them a storm. Alira hesitated. We'd need someone who can protect the signal, encrypt the source, avoid a trace. Daniel grinned faintly. I know a guy. Remember Martin Silva? Lena groaned. That paranoid hacker with a bunker in Montana? He owes me, and he doesn't scare easily. Alira smiled. Then let's do it. As they packed, a silence settled in, an unspoken understanding. They were no longer running to survive. They were preparing to fight back. Daniel stood by the door, revolver holstered, backpack ready. He looked at Alira. Are you still with me? She met his gaze. To the end. And with that, they disappeared into the forest shadows, ghosts of a war the world didn't even know was being fought. But that was about to change. Forever. The road to Martin Silva's compound was unmarked and intentionally difficult. Hidden in the rugged terrain of western Montana, it was designed to keep out the uninvited and the unprepared. Daniel remembered Martin from his father's funeral. Back then, he seemed like a harmless recluse, but in reality, Martin was a digital phantom, former cybersecurity analyst turned whistleblower, then ghost. As their borrowed jeep bounced over jagged gravel, Alira clutched the flash drive like a talisman. Her eyes scanned every passing tree, every shadow. She hadn't slept much since the escape. None of them had. He'll help us, Daniel said, glancing at her through the rear-view mirror. Or he'll shoot us on sight, Lena muttered. I sent him a dead drop message last night. He's expecting us. That doesn't mean he's happy about it. After 2 hours of climbing forest roads, the trees thinned and revealed a rusted gate flanked by motion-activated cameras. A digital voice crackled from an old speaker. Identify. It's Daniel Hayes, son of Everett. A long pause. Then the gate creaked open. Inside the compound, old tech gear was stacked in piles beside solar panels and satellite dishes. Martin stepped out of a prefab structure, rifle in hand, bearded, wiry, eyes sharp as ever. You brought a storm to my doorstep, he said. Daniel nodded. That storm's already here. We just need lightning. Martin looked them over, pausing on Alira. You have it? She held up the drive. Everything. He stared at it, then sighed. Then let's get to work. Inside Martin's bunker, the temperature dropped, figuratively and literally. The entire space buzzed with digital activity. Servers whirring, monitors blinking, terminals open to streams of encrypted code. Martin took the drive and examined it like a surgeon preparing for a delicate operation. I'll copy it onto an isolated server, he said. Then we'll review what you've got. Daniel and Lena sat on metal folding chairs, while Alira hovered near the monitors, eyes scanning the lines of code as Martin decrypted the drive. One by one, folders opened. Dozens of them, emails, wire transfers, satellite images, surveillance footage, project logs, names. Alira pointed. That's one of their ghost accounts. They use it to fund cleanup operations. Martin clicked through a spreadsheet. Multiple transfers to a shell corporation based in Dubai, followed by another to an NGO in Guatemala. But that NGO's registered address leads back to a Virex-owned facility in Virginia. Daniel rubbed his eyes. So this is how they hide it. Shells within shells. Martin nodded grimly. These people are pros. Some of this stuff goes back 20 years. Can you trace it to leadership? Lena asked. Martin clicked a few keys and a series of organizational charts populated the screen. At the top, the board. No photos, just code names: Spectre, Atlas, Greyhand. These are your kingpins, Martin said, the ones who pull every string, but they've never been seen in public together. No fingerprints, no records. Daniel leaned in. Then we change that. Martin looked skeptical. You want to expose the most dangerous people on the planet from this shack. Elira stepped forward. We don't need to expose them, just fracture their protection, leak the accounts, force their allies to run, create fear, make them bleed in the dark. Martin grinned. Now that's the kind of plan I can work with. They worked through the night, creating decoy uploads, prepping a secure dead man's switch, building a cascading upload that would trigger if any of them were caught. By dawn, Martin stood back and crossed his arms. We're ready. Daniel looked at the others. Then we hit send. Lena placed a hand on his shoulder. Are you ready for what comes next? Daniel's eyes were steady. I've been ready since the day I heard her chains rattle. And with a final keystroke, the data began to spread through the darknet, whistleblower channels, and encrypted social media rings. The first domino had fallen, and Virex was about to feel the tremor. It started with a knock at the gate, not the polite kind. A thunderous, metal-shaking crash echoed through the compound as a blacked-out SUV rammed into the front barricade. Martin's security system shrieked to life. Red lights pulsed, sirens howled, and a robotic voice warned of perimeter breach. Move! Martin shouted, typing furiously at a terminal. Daniel grabbed Elira by the arm and pulled her toward the back exit as Lena spun toward the armory rack. They're here faster than I thought. That upload must have sent a beacon straight to them. Martin slammed a red button, triggering explosive traps at the gate. Flames erupted outside, but they wouldn't hold forever. They're going to make an example out of you, Daniel, Martin shouted. You're the face now. You led the leak. Daniel's heart pounded. He had always feared anonymity. Now he feared fame even more. They burst out the back door into the dense woods, gunfire rattling behind them. Lena laid down suppressive fire, her expression ice-cold, calculating. They've tagged you, she hissed. You're a marked man now. Your name's going to be on every blacklist they own. Daniel ran, dragging Elira through the trees. Then let's give them a reason to remember it. As they vanished into the forest, the bunker behind them erupted in a fiery explosion. Martin's base was gone, but the mission had just begun. They didn't stop running until dusk. Hidden beneath a rocky overhang near an alpine creek, the three fugitives huddled together. Smoke still clung to their clothes. Daniel's chest ached with every breath. Martin was gone, his home, his haven, reduced to ash. Daniel sat on a flat stone and stared at his trembling hands. This was my fault. No, Elira said softly, sitting beside him. This was their fault. We just hit them where it hurt. Lena unrolled a map on her lap. We need shelter and new identities. Virex won't make the same mistake twice. Daniel looked up. What if we stop running? What if we fight head on? Lena raised an eyebrow. You want to go public? Not yet, he replied. We keep moving, but we plant seeds. We turn every ally of Virex against them. If they've marked me, I'll use it. I'll become a story, a martyr they can't silence. You'll paint a target on everyone you care about, Lena warned. Daniel shook his head. I don't have anyone left, except you two. Lena exhaled slowly. Then we burn the bridges. No way back. That night, they used an old satellite phone to contact 3 trusted voices, an underground journalist, a political dissident, and a former NSA analyst. Each received a portion of the data with coded instructions. Within 24 hours, leaks hit major darknet channels and underground news sources. The headlines read, Insider Files Reveal Global Web of Corporate Espionage. Anonymous source ties executives to intelligence black ops. Who is Daniel Hayes, and why is he being hunted? By morning, Daniel's name was trending on encrypted forums and pirate broadcasters. Virex's name was everywhere. Their secrets, once buried, were now poison spreading through the system. But the cost was rising fast. Their burner phones went dead. Every safe house Lena had used before was compromised. People they once called friends weren't answering. Daniel stared into the fire that night, the same way he had looked into his burning home. I didn't ask for this, he said. Elira reached across and squeezed his hand. But maybe you were meant for it. They didn't sleep, because somewhere out there, Virex was already planning their next move. And it would be their deadliest yet. 2 days after the data leak, the world began to change. Quietly, at first,